There's a moment in life when everything changes, not because someone else changed, not because the circumstances magically became better, but because you made a decision to shift your focus. You stopped looking outward, waiting, wondering, overanalyzing. You took all that energy, all that longing, and turned it inward, and that shift, right there, is what sets off a chain reaction. It's not about chasing, proving, or persuading anymore. It's about rising. Evolving, becoming the person you were always meant to be, and when that shift happens, watch how fast everything starts moving back toward you. When you shift your focus, you change your frequency. You no longer operate from fear, from insecurity, from the illusion that you're not enough. Instead, you begin to operate from presence, power, peace. The people who once overlooked you, they start to notice. The ones who took your energy for granted, they start to feel the void, and it's not because you said anything, it's because you finally stopped trying. You stopped chasing what was already yours and started being who you were born to be. When you shift your focus away from what's not working and place it back on yourself, everything begins to feel different. It starts quietly. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You stop replaying conversations in your head, trying to find meaning in someone else's mixed signals. You stop wondering where you stand in someone else's life. Instead, your mind starts asking deeper, more important questions. Where do I stand in my own life? What makes me feel alive? What did I set aside while I was making someone else my priority? That awareness alone begins to change your state of being. Because suddenly you realize how much of your energy was being drained just waiting, hoping, trying to understand or be understood, and you decide, enough. The moment you choose to stop watching and start living, you take your power back. You move from the passenger seat to the driver's seat of your own life. You get up and move, not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but out of a deep desire to reconnect with yourself. You start to pursue your passions again. You book that class, make that call, take that walk, make that change. You turn your gaze from the door that's closed to all the windows that are wide open, and in doing so, you begin to glow differently, not because someone else finally gave you permission, but because you stopped asking for it. There's something magnetic about a person who is present in their own life. When you become that person, people notice. You walk with more clarity. You carry yourself with purpose. You're no longer in limbo. You're not sending mixed signals to the universe by sitting in indecision. You're moving, and movement creates energy. Movement attracts opportunity. Movement says, I'm no longer stuck. That's the shift they feel, even from afar. Your silence, your detachment, your peace, it doesn't go unnoticed. It actually becomes louder than all the words you ever tried to say. What happens next is unexpected. The one you thought you needed validation from starts feeling your absence. Not because you cut them off with drama or harsh words, but because you stopped orbiting around them. You're no longer available in the same way. Your energy is no longer directed toward waiting. It's directed toward becoming. That space you once filled with overthinking and emotional knots is now full of new energy, new goals, new joy, and that joy, that's what makes you magnetic. You didn't change to get a reaction, you changed to get free. You started living your life as if it mattered, because it does. You stopped watching their life unfold and started creating your own. That kind of shift is rare, that kind of shift is powerful, and whether they admit it or not, it's felt deeply, because the version of you that once waited, questioned, and hoped, she's no longer at the window, she's out in the world, finally living. When you shift your focus inward, something powerful happens. You stop craving attention, and instead, you begin to embody a quiet confidence that demands respect without ever having to ask for it. In the past, you may have found yourself constantly wondering, do they notice me? Or do they care as much as I do? That hunger for attention, often rooted in emotional uncertainty, had you seeking external proof of your value. But once your focus turns back to yourself, your growth, your peace, your vision, that craving starts to fade. You no longer need to be seen to feel seen because you've finally started to see yourself. That shift is deep. It's not about faking strength or pretending to not care. It's about realigning with your own truth. You begin to realize that needing attention from the wrong people often comes at the expense of your peace. It keeps you in a cycle of proving, performing, and pleasing. But once you understand that your worth isn't tied to someone else's acknowledgement, You stop looking for the spotlight and start walking in your own light, and that light, it shines brighter than anything you ever begged for. As you become more self-aware, you notice the little ways you used to chase attention, over-explaining, over-giving, being available even when it drained you, but now you're not reaching anymore, you're choosing. You don't send that extra message. You don't keep asking the same question, hoping for a different answer. You don't fight to be chosen. You choose you, and in that choice, your energy shifts from seeking approval to radiating assurance. That energy commands something different from the world around you, not because you're louder, but because your boundaries are now firm and your self-respect is unshakable. People respond to this change whether they realize it or not. When you stop needing their attention to feel validated, they start noticing what they've lost access to. The version of you that needed their confirmation is gone. In her place stands someone rooted in purpose, peace, and power. And that's when the magnetic pull begins, because there's nothing more attractive than someone who doesn't need you, but is complete with or without you. It challenges them, it humbles them, it draws them in. You don't chase anymore, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've started caring about yourself more. And ironically, that's when people start paying attention, not to the version of you that tried to be enough, but to the version that finally realized she already was. That realization changes everything, because once you stop craving attention, you no longer settle for breadcrumbs. You only accept what aligns with your light. When you shift your focus, something remarkable happens. You start craving peace more than you crave answers. That need to dissect every interaction, every silence, every mixed signal begins to fade. You realize that chasing clarity from someone who won't give it only creates more chaos inside you. So instead of seeking emotional resolution from the outside, you begin to find it within. You let go of the urge to control the outcome, you breathe deeper, you stop reacting to every trigger, and in that stillness, peace becomes your new standard. Not just something you desire, but something you require. This transformation isn't loud. It's subtle, intentional, and deeply empowering. You start recognizing how often your energy was tangled up in confusion. You spent so much time trying to interpret signals that you forgot to honor your own. You were stuck in an emotional loop, hoping things would change if you just gave more, asked differently, or stayed patient enough. But when you shift your focus, you realize the cost of your peace is too high a price to pay for someone else's comfort. You begin to release situations that keep you emotionally unsettled, even if you once loved them. The power of peace lies in the way it sharpens your clarity. You start to see things as they are, not as you wish they were. That doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear, and clarity is magnetic. When you're no longer confused about who you are or what you deserve, people can feel that. You stop engaging in emotional tug-of-wars. You stop giving explanations to people committed to misunderstanding you. You simply disengage from anything that disturbs your emotional rhythm. And that silence, that calm detachment, it's not weakness. It's wisdom. What others once called walking away is really just you walking toward yourself, toward peace, toward emotional safety, toward a life that doesn't require you to prove your worth. You're no longer available for inconsistency because your nervous system now craves peace more than passion built on instability. That shift is powerful, that shift is healing, and when people experience your absence instead of your reaction, it creates a new kind of impact, one they don't forget. You start to realize that your peace is a boundary in itself. You don't need to defend it, you just live in it. And the more you prioritize peace, the more you attract people and opportunities that match that vibration. You become unavailable for chaos, and in turn, your energy becomes sacred. And what's most unexpected, the people who once kept you in confusion now feel unsettled by your peace, because the calm you found, it's the very thing they didn't expect you to choose, but you did, and you're never going back. When you shift your focus, you begin to realign with the version of yourself that existed before the overthinking, before the constant giving, before you wrapped your entire identity around someone else's presence or absence. It's not about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who you were before you forgot. That version of you had dreams, joy, purpose, and fire. She didn't wait for permission to feel whole. She didn't put herself on pause, hoping someone else would hit play. She was alive, and when you begin to reconnect with her, your entire energy begins to change. This realignment doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual awakening. At first, you start to notice how many things you abandoned, hobbies, goals, routines, all because you were so consumed with trying to hold something together. But now, the attention you used to give to fixing things outside of you turns inward. You get back into the gym, you journal, you create, you reconnect with the parts of you that didn't rely on anyone's love to feel fulfilled. You begin to rebuild yourself from the inside out, not to be better for someone else, but to feel alive in your own skin again. And that energy, it doesn't lie. People can see it, they can feel it. There's a new rhythm to the way you carry yourself, steadier, more certain. You're no longer asking, why didn't they choose me? Because you've already chosen yourself. You speak differently, you move with intention, you're not triggered by the same things because yourself. Worth is no longer in their hands, you're in alignment with your true self again, and that energy is both rare and undeniable. What you're really doing is reclaiming your center. You're putting your emotional power back where it belongs, in your hands, and that groundedness, that deep-rooted confidence is what makes everything start to shift around you. Because when you are aligned, you don't chase. You attract, you don't explain, you exist in truth. You don't beg, you embody your worth, and in that embodiment, others are either pulled toward your light or exposed by it. The irony is, the very moment you realign with your highest self is often the moment everything you once chased begins to circle back. Not because you tried harder, but because you stopped trying. You let go of the outcome, and in doing so, you became a match for something greater. People feel that clarity, they feel that growth, they feel the difference between who you were when you were reaching and who you are now, standing tall in your power. This realignment doesn't just change your relationships, it changes you, and once that happens, there's no turning back. When you shift your focus, you begin to lose interest in the things that once emotionally drained you. The games, the inconsistency, the waiting. All of it starts to feel small compared to the peace you've created within. You no longer have the patience to explain your worth to anyone who can't already see it. That isn't arrogance, it's awareness. You've done the work, you've sat with your pain, you've asked the hard questions. And now you're no longer available for connections that require you to shrink just to keep them. You've raised your standards quietly, not as a defense, but as a declaration of self-respect. You begin to notice how powerful your emotional availability truly is. In the past, you gave so much of yourself without hesitation. Your time, your thoughts, your love, your energy, but now you've become intentional. You don't pour into empty spaces. You don't keep trying to spark something where the fire has died. You guard your heart, not out of fear, but out of wisdom, and this version of you is someone that others don't recognize right away, because you used to be so accessible, so ready to fix, to talk, to explain. Now you simply observe, and that silence says more than words ever could. You become unavailable to what once distracted you, emotional chaos. You no longer engage, vague attention, not enough anymore. Incomplete effort doesn't move you, and because you've stopped feeding those patterns, they begin to dissolve. People who once had easy access to your energy start to feel the distance, not because you slammed the door, but because you stopped holding it open. That space becomes powerful, it creates reflection, it creates discomfort for those who once depended on your emotional labor to feel important, but more importantly, it creates freedom for you. You're no longer emotionally available for what doesn't serve your growth. You don't explain why you're pulling back. You don't warn anyone. You just shift. You redirect. You reinvest in yourself. And that choice doesn't just protect you. It evolves you. It creates a version of you who doesn't need closure to move forward, who doesn't need apologies to find peace. You learn that your healing was never going to come from outside of you. It was always going to start with a single decision: I deserve better. And that decision, it changes the entire atmosphere. You're not just unavailable to toxic patterns. You're unavailable to your old self. The one who stayed too long, who gave too much, who waited for someone to choose her, she's gone. In her place is someone who chooses herself, and from that place you don't chase anything anymore. Because everything that's meant for you now has to match the version of you who finally knows her worth and protects it like gold. When you shift your focus, you stop chasing, and that's when you begin to attract. You stop giving your energy to things that confuse you, disrespect you, or leave you second, guessing your value. Instead, your energy starts pulling in the very things that once seemed out of reach. You're no longer driven by desperation or emotional need. You're centered, grounded, calm. You're not trying to get anyone's attention anymore because your attention is now focused on your own growth, your own joy, your own purpose. And ironically, that's exactly what draws others back toward you, especially the one who once underestimated your worth. Attraction isn't about manipulation or pretending not to care. It's about alignment. It's about the powerful frequency you emit when you are truly at peace with yourself. You no longer try to force a connection or prove your worth. You're not trying to be chosen. You are the choice, and you carry yourself that way. Your presence becomes impactful not because you speak louder, but because you radiate confidence. The version of you that once chased has been replaced by someone who now receives. And that shift is undeniable. People start to notice that you're no longer available in the same way. You're not lingering in uncertainty or trying to fix things that aren't yours to fix. You've detached not out of spite, but out of strength. And that detachment creates space for others to finally sit with their own reflection, space for them to feel the absence of your emotional labor, and that space, it pulls, it whispers, it reminds them of what once was, and what's now missing. You're no longer in a position of trying to earn someone's place in your life. You're busy building yours. Your time becomes precious. Your boundaries become firm. Your peace becomes your priority, and that transformation causes others to look at you differently. What once felt easily accessible is now sacred. What was once taken for granted is now deeply missed, not because you punished anyone, but because you evolved. The energy of attraction is rooted in self-trust. You trust that the right people, the right situations, the right love will find you when you're in alignment. You no longer chase energy that drains you. You don't settle for attention that lacks intention. You attract everything that matches the version of you that's finally showing up for herself, and it's that energy, that quiet, unshakable, magnetic energy that causes what you once chased to come running back. Because what they now see is someone who is no longer dependent on their return. Someone who's already whole, and that wholeness, that's what calls them in. Not your effort, not your pursuit, but your complete and undeniable shift. There comes a moment in your life when everything you once thought you needed from someone else begins to pale in comparison to what you're now giving yourself. That moment begins with a simple decision to shift your focus. You stop living for someone's attention, validation, or return, and you start living for you. That one shift changes everything. The energy that once poured outward, pleading to be seen, now floods inward, rebuilding every broken part of you with love, intention, and purpose. And the world, it responds, not because you forced it, but because you finally aligned with the version of yourself that was never meant to chase. In this new space, you begin to reclaim your identity. You stop making decisions based on fear of losing someone. You stop bending your truth to fit inside someone else's uncertainty. You rise quietly, powerfully, gracefully. You start doing things that light you up again. You find yourself smiling without reason, sleeping better, breathing deeper, and that's when people begin to notice. The one who once confused you starts to feel confused. The one who took you for granted begins to wonder why your energy feels different. Because you're no longer trying to win them back, you've already come home to yourself. This kind of transformation doesn't beg for recognition, it doesn't chase closure, it doesn't try to prove anything. It simply becomes, you become someone who no longer waits to be chosen. You become someone who chooses themselves so completely that anyone who wants to be in your life must rise to meet you there, and that shift. It radiates, it draws in what's meant for you, not because you planned it, but because your frequency has changed. You've moved out of survival mode and into self-respect, out of longing and into leadership over your own life. And here's the most powerful part. The very moment you stopped focusing on them is the moment they started focusing on you. It's not a game, it's not manipulation, it's energy, it's how the universe works. When you operate from self-worth instead of scarcity, you stop attracting confusion and start attracting clarity. The people who are meant to walk with you now feel that shift, and the one who once ran away, They feel it the most, not because you shouted, not because you chased, but because your silence, your evolution, and your peace are louder than any words ever could be. So remember this, the focus was never supposed to be on their return. It was always supposed to be on your rebirth. When you shift your focus, you don't just change your path, you change your entire vibration. You become someone who no longer needs to be found because you've finally found yourself. And when that happens, what's truly meant for you doesn't stay away. It returns, not because you waited, but because you transformed. If this message resonated with you, it's because deep inside, you already know your power. You already feel the pull to turn inward, to rise, to finally shift your focus from waiting to becoming. This isn't just about relationships. It's about you, your growth, your voice, your peace, and your ability to walk away from what no longer reflects the love you've learned to give yourself. I hope you remember in moments of doubt that your silence can be louder than your words. Your shift in focus isn't small, it's a declaration. And when you start showing up for yourself with love, consistency, and respect, the world reflects that back to you. The version of you who chooses herself every single time is the one who cannot be ignored. So thank you for choosing to rise. Thank you for deciding to pour into yourself. Thank you for not giving up, even when you felt unseen. Your journey is unfolding in ways you may not even realize yet, and the right energy will always find you when you're aligned with who you truly are. Until next time, keep your focus sacred, your energy protected, and your heart open, but only to what honors you. You're not just heard here, you're seen. Take care, stay powerful, and goodbye for now.